Okay, let's dive in. Think about this. Right under your feet, here in the Peace River region, there's this incredibly deep history. I mean, stuff that makes today feel like, well, just yesterday.
It's kind of mind-bending, really. The sources we looked at show that this whole familiar landscape,
Yeah.
350 million years ago, it was actually a warm tropical sea, way closer to the equator than it is now.
Wow. And not just empty sea, right? There were these huge, massive reef structures.
Exactly. Built by organisms like early corals and these things called stromatoporoids. Think sort of layered, stony, sponge-like structures building up rock over vast amounts of time. Huge ecosystems.
So these ancient structures are still down there, buried deep.
They are. And what's really fascinating, what the sources highlight, is that this ancient geology isn't just history. It's actually still shaping things today, influencing modern activity, even causing the ground to move in subtle ways.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. Using the material you sent us, we want to connect that incredibly ancient past right in your backyard if you're listening in the Peace region to what's happening now, both deep down and maybe even at the surface.
Yeah, there are some surprising links in this data. The geology here is really layered, like pages in a book, almost.
So what are the layers?
Well, deep down, you've got the really old Precambrian basement rock, the foundation. Then you get that Devonian period, about 350 million years ago. That's when those big reefs were built.
Okay.
Then later, things like the Peace River Arch formed basically a big uplift that pushed some older rocks closer to the surface. Then the Cretaceous seas came in and left behind younger layers like the Montney shales, sitting right on top of those older reefs.
Ah, the Montney. We hear about that a lot.
We do. And then, much more recently, geologically speaking, you had the Ice Age glaciers scouring and carving the surface landscape we see now.
So back to those Devonian reefs buried under things like the Montney. They were tropical hotspots once. What are they now?
Now they're deep underground, and they act as unconventional oil and gas reservoirs. The oil and gas is trapped within the complex structure of that ancient reef rock itself.
Right. And here's where the modern world meets the ancient world, isn't it?
Precisely. Because modern hydraulic fracking is often happening in those younger Montney shales, the ones above the old reefs.
Okay.
But the stress, the pressure from that fracking activity, it doesn't just stay put. It can actually travel downwards, and it can reactivate really old fault systems.
Yeah.
Faults that formed way back when those Devonian reefs were being created or buried.
So the ancient reef structure itself becomes a factor in modern operations.
Kind of like a pre-existing zone of weakness, yeah.
Yeah.
It responds to that new stress from above.
And we can actually see this happening. It's not just a theory.
No, the sources point to actual data. There's this satellite technology, InSAR. It uses radar, basically, to measure tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in the ground surface over time.
Like millimeter level changes?
Exactly. And what the data shows is that these subtle patterns of ground deformation, little ups and downs, they often map out almost perfectly the buried edges and shapes of those ancient Devonian reefs below.
Wow. So you're seeing the ghost of a 350-million-year-old reef in modern satellite data because of ground movement today.
That's pretty much it. It's remarkable. And it connects to, real events.
Like earthquakes.
Well, seismic events, yeah. The sources mention a specific instance, a magnitude 4.2 tremor, noticeable, and it was linked directly to fracking activity in the Montney.
And location.
Directly above one of these buried Devonian reef complexes. It really suggests that the old structure played a role in how and where that seismic energy was released.
Okay, so this isn't just abstract geology miles down. How might this, ancient history actually affect someone living up top on the surface in the Peace region?
That's a great question. The sources suggest it can have subtle influences. Think about potholes, maybe. Some areas might get more potholes because they form over the boundaries of these buried reefs, where the ground might settle just a tiny bit differently.
Never thought of that.
Or it could influence things like drainage. Maybe some areas are naturally a bit rockier, or the water runs off differently because of the nature of the buried rock boundary beneath them. Invisible lines underground affecting the soil and water you see.
It makes you wonder if it could have even shaped historical patterns. Maybe old trails followed slightly higher, better drained ground related to these features, or wildlife movements.
It's definitely possible these deep structures have subtle surface expressions that influence things over long periods. There's actually a cool little anecdote in the source material.
Oh, yeah.
About a farmer near Fort St. John. Part of his field was right on top of one of these buried reefs, and he always said that part of the field just felt different. Rockier soil, apparently. better drainage than the fields next door, maybe even subtle high spots you wouldn't really notice unless you work the land day in, day out.
So that's the ancient reef, 350 million years old, making itself known in how a modern farmer works his land.
Exactly. A direct, tangible connection across that immense span of time. It really changes how you might see the ground beneath you, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So let's recap. We've got this amazing link pulled from the sources between these ancient tropical reefs buried deep under the Peace River region, and modern industrial activity causing the ground to shift, sometimes even triggering noticeable seismic events today.
Right. It shows the landscape isn't just static background. It's this readable record of incredibly deep time, and it's still responding to stresses, both natural and increasingly human-induced.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other hidden histories, what other ancient stories locked in the rock layers deep beneath us might be subtly shaping the world right under our feet? Something maybe to ponder next time you're out walking around your own neighborhood.